Jig fishing. What is it all about? Let's talk about it here on the Googan Lab. So you've heard about jigs. You've heard that they catch big fish, and some people are intimidated to fish them. So we're going to talk about how do you fish a jig. So a jig is basically a jig head with a hook on it and a brush guard, but it has a skirt. And the amazing thing about a skirt is in the water, it has a lifelike flare to it, and that a lot of times draws strikes. It's a bigger presence than what it actually is, and it's so good for hook sets too, because you have this big presence, you can get a big bite, but your hook is just going through a skirt. It doesn't have to go through a lot of plastic, so it really makes it an efficient tool in your tackle box. But how you fish it, you can fish it so many different ways, but a jig is mostly fished around cover, bumping cover, bumping it, dragging it on the bottom. And the jig that I've got right here is a little juicy jig. It has a flat bottom side, so this jig will sit up on the bottom so you can crawl it. And it also has a low profile line tie to it, so you can work it through cover if you need to. If you're going to just pitch into heavy cover, there's other jigs that you're going to use, but this is just a general clear water fishing jig that I like to use. I've got a little bandito bug as a trailer on it, and how I'm fishing it right here is I've got some brush out in front of me, so I can pitch the jig into the brush, and I'm targeting those fish that are hanging close to that cover. Maybe they're right on it. Right now we're in the post spawn, so we've got a lot of fish hanging around brush and trees. But I've also got some rocks. I have a long extended point with this brush on it. There's some good little chunk rock on it. So I'll also just cast it out, and I'm gonna drag the jig until I feel some of those rocks. And when I get to the rocks, that's when I'm gonna shake the jig. I'll pop it over it, and then I'll drag it until I feel another bit of rocks, and I'll do the same exact thing. Now when you're targeting brush or a dock or maybe a tree, if you can, what I like to do is throw it past it, let the jig sink, and then bring it into the cover. So this isn't really thick brush right here. I can drag it to the side of it. The water's clear. These fish are gonna see it coming no matter what side of the brush they're on. So I'm gonna throw it past it, that way I don't spook the fish when the jig is coming in there. If you're fishing real dirty water, a lot of times you can just pitch right in there on top of them, but I'm trying to be sneaky out here. So if you're doing a dock, same thing. Try to get up under the dock, get past where you think the fish is, and then drag it through there. I'm gonna hold my rod tip up high when I'm pitching to the cover, and I'm just gonna bounce that thing through there. I'm gonna try to make contact. I'll pull, I'll fill the brush, I'll pop it through the brush, and then I'll drop the rod tip and I let it fall. And what you're looking for is your line to just flinch. And that's that bass grabbing that jig head is hitting the back of their throat, and you feel that thump. And it's one of the best bites out of all the bass lures, because they hit this thing so hard. Pitch, past the cover, let it fall. I drop my rod tip when the jig is falling, so it's not gonna swing towards me. It's gonna fall straight down, and I'm just gonna pull up, feel for cover, feel the cover, pop it, let it fall. And once you get away from the piece of cover that you think the fish is on, you can just go ahead and reel it in. Now when I want to fish the rocks that are out here, I'll go ahead and I'll just make a long cast. I'm going to line my boat up, or my cast up, where all these rocks are coming along this point. And then I'm going to hold my rod tip down to my side like this, and I'm just going to drag it like this until I feel the cover. And that jig is going to stay upright. When it stops, the skirt is going to flare out in the water, and when I'm moving it, it's going to suck back in, and it's going to be low profile. And when a jig puffs out like that, it looks like a bluegill that's being defensive, or a crawfish that's in a defensive position, and it gets those bass to eat it. And when you do finally get that thump, you want to make sure you're getting a good hook set, because you do have a brush guard on here. The brush guard is harder to get a hook set through, so you're going to want to drop your rod tip when you feel the bite, and then just set it straight up. If you try to set the hook, if you're gonna try to set the hook from already a high position, it's gonna be much harder. So you wanna drop the rod tip, reel down a few times, and then come straight up. As far as gear goes, I always fish jigs on at least 15-pound fluorocarbon. I'm fishing a finesse jig right now, and sometimes I go with 15, but usually I'm throwing 17 or 20, and sometimes even 25, because you do get big bites. The bass will really eat that jig a lot of times, and you want to have an abrasive resistant line, especially fishing around cover. You've got the bass's teeth to deal with. And you don't want to break that fish off. You know, when you get a jig bite, sometimes it could be a really big one. So I like to go with heavier line, and I also go with a heavy rod. Usually I'm fishing a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce in most jigs, and I'm going with the muscle rod. And this rod is a 7.5. It's a heavy power, fast action, and it's going to hold up to jig fishing. And I just fish the fastest gear ratio reel I can find, because I'm going to reel it in quick. I'm going to go to the next target. It just helps to have a high-speed gear ratio reel. And also, fish will pick that jig up sometimes and come right at you, especially if you're fishing around a ledge or there's some deeper water under your boat. They'll pick it up and they'll start swimming in deeper water, so you want to have that faster gear ratio reel so you can catch up to them as they come at you. So that's how you fish a jig for the most part. There's a few other techniques, but those are the main techniques. And if you want to see more tips on trailers and different techniques, subscribe right here to the Googan Lab. We'll see you next time.